So we'll start with a quick check-in with the Mercuries. I did think that it might reveal a multitude of sins once I got that copper paint sanded down, and indeed it did. The red one, there's a kind of a gap between where the original feature was and the one that and the extension to it that I've made. I'm going to try and bridge that gap with some super glue. I think that'd be a lot easier than putting more modelling clay or anything, or even putty or anything like that. Just try and get a strong bridge between the two surfaces using that. And hopefully once that's had time to harden, I should be able to sand that down absolutely seamlessly. The other one, the central feature, was a little bit too high on that, so I've taken it down a little bit, and then I've put some white paint, some white spray paint, which you'll see in a second, just to see how that's kind of getting on. And it's still a little bit high, so I think that's probably the next thing we'll do with that, is just a little bit more sanding down that central feature. Now, anybody remember the Buick Riviera that I seem to completely forget about once I've painted it red? This is the one that's got the... Originally I was thinking that I might give it like the original kind of Hot Wheels style finish underneath by not really prepping, not mirror polishing the metal, just leaving it looking quite raw. That's not really what happened, because I did put it on quite thick. I mean, I knew it might turn out like this, and what I instead got was a very thick and very glossy kind of candy apple red, which is absolutely fine. It quite suits the car nicely. So now we've got it like that, we may as well just detail this up a bit and give it as many details as we can, really. Yeah, that was the police. I'm not going to do the joke about how they're coming for me. I mean, I sort of did do the joke by saying I wasn't going to do the joke, really. But yeah, to get the windscreen surrounds on these, well, any 70s car really, where they've provided anything in the casting whatsoever for you to be able to sort of pick out and get a hold of, the easiest way, I think, to replicate the sort of chrome window surrounds is to just scrape it all back with the Stanley knife blade, just to reveal the bright metal underneath. And if you scrape it fairly hard, the brighter the metal will be, and the more like chrome or aluminium window surround trim it'll actually look. Do it once the paint's been on a good few days, because then it'll have hardened up properly, especially when it's quite thick paint like this. When you've actually flayed the paint off, just go over it with a sanding pad like that, and that'll polish it up further. But like I said, do it when it's been on a few days, and then you've got less risk of dragging paint off that you don't mean to. I mean, that's especially important here with this bit, because there's a very high risk while you're chipping your way along this. I mean, you just chip your way along it like less than a millimetre at a time, and then just comb it back with the blade to get that bit off, and then try and chip another little section of it off. And it's very, very difficult to... Well, I won't say it's very difficult, but it's very easy to accidentally flay some extra paint off with it, or drag some extra paint off with it. So that's why it's important that you only really try and do this when it's very, very much hardened. So I would say, especially if you've put thick transparent paint on like this, I would say leave it about a week before you try anything like this, really. And even then you've got to be careful, and even then you will nick the paint off in places. There's absolutely no avoiding it, but if you do, don't worry too much. You can just, as long as they're only little pinpricks, you can just seal them up like that. Just get the fragmented end of a cocktail stick and just dab it in. The grill, this is how we did that Ranchero that I did randomly the other day, and the Mercury Cyclone from a bit ago. Just get it vertically, get some Tamiya Grey smoke. Well, that's what I'm using. There are other things that are like that. There's something with a very strange name that I don't remember what it's called, but I've seen other people seemingly use it quite extensively, and it seems to do a similar thing. But it's a translucent black, so that it will fill in the sort of slats of the grill to make it look more like a real grill, but it will leave any chrome bits, because it'll just kind of sink and leave any sort of other bits that are supposed to be chrome. It will leave them chrome, if you like it's done with the... I mean, it's done that with the kind of centre of the grill a little bit, so I might put a little bit more on later. The interior is not exactly a work of art. I don't know why they've put all that rubbish in the back of it, especially in what would be the boot or the trunk. If you're in the US, they've put a load of rubbish in there. I don't know why. Nobody's ever going to see it. It doesn't open. There's no opening there. So you're only ever going to see that if you drill it open and take it apart, really. But I'm just going to pretend I didn't see it. What I've done here, I've mixed up some Tamiya flat white with... I just dabbed the brush in some copper, some Tamiya copper, and then mixed it all up to create like a little bit of a orangey beige, well, more of a beige It was certainly more of a beige when I put a little bit more white into the mix because I just thought it was a little bit too dark. I wanted it to be almost a cream rather than a beige, and that's more or less what it ended up. You can just brush that on. Tamiya paint does self-level beautifully. Anyway, we're going to look at a couple that have been largely forgotten so far. So this is a Super GT Maserati Bora. So it's one of those where it was originally made in the 70s with an interior and glass and opening doors and things like that. And then they just kind of sealed up the doors, got rid of the interior, give it black glass, and sold it cheap in the 80s as like a bit of a re-release. I've got the casting cleaned up a little bit and put a coat of gold on just to see what it looked like. It actually looks quite nice in gold. And then I've gone back and I've filed down and tidied up some of the rough areas of the casting because it's probably quite an old worn out casting by the time they did this kind of re-release. So there were quite a few bits where I just had to file it and do some quite heavy sanding, but I think there's a lot of potential with this. And then the next one, this is going to be a little bit of fun, the Matchbox Airport bus. There is, amongst the million variations of this thing, there is actually a ground bus variant, and I thought right at the start this would look better as a ground bus. Even before I knew the ground variant was a real thing, I thought this would look better if we made it so it's all silver and made it like a ground bus. And I've got a little bit of a fun idea because I've never really experimented with transfers or stickers up until now, but I'm going to have to do that at some point. If I'm going to have a ground bus, I need a ground on the side of it, and luckily I've got one of those here. Because if I'm going to make transfers or stickers to go on these cars, I don't want them to be somebody else's. I don't want to be downloading PDFs and printing them out. I want to be basing them on photos that I've actually taken, usually in silhouette form just to get like the shape of something. So for the bus, I'm going to need the ground in full flight. I'm going to need the second fastest land mammal in all its vigour and fury. Or do I give the ground bus company a logo that's a little bit more representative of the real thing? So we take his photo, make a silhouette of it, and then use that to print out a transfer of that, and there you go. It's only a mock-up at this stage. It's just something I've photoshopped together, but I think that's going to have to happen. So busy little outing for the Riviera, getting all its trim. I've done the arch trim as well, and the interior and the front grille. But there's still some way to go on this. It needs lacquering, it needs the rear lights doing, the headlights doing. I think that might be more or less it by the time we've got to all that. But anyway, join me next time, and thank you for watching.